Okay. There may be some people that will join us as we're going along, but
Yeah.
get started. I have a few introductory comments to make and then start with the presentation. So first off, I'm Mike Gillette, Town Administrator in town, and I'll be emceeing this presentation tonight. The goal of tonight's presentation is to inform people, residents, of the current status of the police station project. This is a project that we've been working on for almost 2.5 years. And I'm very proud to say that it's been a very sincere effort and came to a very nice conclusion. Over those 2.5-year period, there have been several opportunities that have been taken to introduce this project at its various stages, whether it was where to locate the police station, whether or not to combine it with the fire station, how exactly to design it, what it should look like on the exterior, on the interior. All of those facets have been discussed either in information sessions like this, in front of the Board of Selectmen, the host at the task force meetings, which are all open to the public, in front of the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, which are permitting, the School Department, which had some input in this as far as access to the project. So we've had a number of public information sessions and opportunities for comment. And what I'm proudest of, and what I repeat oftentimes, is this is a community that does not only go and get public comment as much as we do, but we actually incorporate the public comment. We spend a lot of time discussing what we've heard people say, and to the extent that it makes sense, and that it works, and that it improves the project, it gets incorporated. So what I'm proud of tonight is that this is a culmination of all of those comments, of all of those sessions that we've had in front of the public at various stages. And this is the presentation that we've got prepared to go to town meeting for funding so we can construct the police station. Now, there are a number of town officials in the audience here tonight that are here to listen. Two selectmen, Pat Ahern and Nancy Hyde, are here. Nancy will be the main presenter as chairman of the task force. We've got members of the task force, George Perks, Maureen Day, well, yeah, Nora would be on the staff. And then we have staff. We have Nora, we have the police chief, who's brought Sergeant Lindsay and his new female officer, Heather Rose, who's just joined the force. Pam Dukeman's here as our finance director, who will be part of the presentation. The fire chief and Deputy Mike Reardon are here as well as public safety officials. And then we have our consultants. We have Compass Engineering, Compass Project Management with Tim Bonfatti. Don Walters is here, and then Snyder and associates are here, Phil and Don. So we've got a number of people that are here from the town to listen to comments and help in answering any questions that you have in this evening's presentation. The way this is going to work is there will be a presentation that will last about 25 minutes, probably 45 minutes at the maximum, leaving about an hour for questions and answers. The target is to answer questions by 9 o'clock and be done no later than 9:30. That'll be the cutoff point. At the end of the presentations, if there still remains some questions, folks will hang around and answer individual questions you might have on your tour. What I ask people to do, what I'll ask you to do when you ask questions is to identify yourself and your address, so we've got that on the record, and to direct the questions to me, and then I'll direct it to the appropriate party for answering. I'll review a little bit more on that when we get to that point, but I'll turn it over to Nancy to begin the presentation.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody who's here tonight and taking the time. I hope that we provide information that is valuable to you, and if anything needs clarification when we get to the Q&A, as Mike said, that would be a good time for that. So here we are tonight. We're about, let's see, it's early March. We're about 6-7 weeks away from town meeting. We've done a lot of work over a long period of time. So where I want to start is a little step back in history, lead you up to what we have designed, and Pam will take over from there and talk about the financing of the project. Mike mentioned a lot of people are here tonight who have served on the task force. This is a list of the participants, and we created the task force from people representing different boards in the town and staff that are critical to the public safety analysis. It's great to have the fire department representation here tonight. As most of you know, last year this time we were talking about the fire station in Islington, which most of you might have driven by to get here tonight to see that it's well underway. This timeline highlights major milestones. I can assure you that there have been tens of more meetings in between, but we wanted to really highlight the key dates that have occurred over time. We kicked off the task force back in July of 2013 and began our work to determine what we needed to do for our fire station safety. We had at that time the approval of University Station, so we knew we were actually going to have this large development on University Avenue. And through analysis that had been done and discussions of the operations of both police and fire, we knew that the fire department needed to grow its staff quickly. It needed additional equipment, and we needed to determine the locations of the fire stations if there were to be 3, which was one of the things we were looking at, or where we would have the second station if we were to keep 2. We knew the current second station in Islington was very outdated and inadequate and not sized enough to take the equipment. So we began there and began a lot of discussions about could we combine police and fire. Through our analysis, we concluded that that wasn't going to work with the real estate we had access to. And we put the decision about the police station on a sort of a parallel track to moving forward with the fire station, the second fire station. And we brought that ultimately to town meeting in May of 2015 last year. And along the way, you can see in June 2014, we made the determination on the Board of Selectmen that when we were to do a police headquarters, we would do it at the same location on High Street. And we entered into design mode for both buildings. And as you can see, going up to November 2015, back last fall, what we brought to town meeting at that point was what I'll call an enabling project. The establishment of the Deerfield Avenue extension, linking Deerfield Avenue to Westwood Glen Road, which runs perpendicular to Town Hall. And we also had some small property acquisitions, including the Girl Scout House. That all was approved in November, and that leads us to where we are today, bringing forward the actual police station project and what we'll show you more about tonight. I've highlighted some of the things in my comments I just made, but here's a list of things that we were doing in 2013, 14, and 15. And I can see many of you did get a copy of this presentation, so if you didn't, they're over by the desk, and we certainly want you to have this material, but I'm not going to repeat it all for you. So let's talk about the police headquarters story. I think this will forward. There we go. This, you can see Town Hall, and what we have in this picture is a rendering of the police station as it's now been designed. When we started looking at what we needed to do with the police station headquarters, we looked at what do we have today and what are the issues that we need to address. First and foremost is the size of the current facility. At only 6,000 square feet, it's over 50 years old. Much of the building is actually below grade, so it is a building where a lot of the essential work of the police force is done in a basement. The corridors are very tight. We've developed technology since the 60s when this building was built. So all in all, we knew we had a building that was substantially less in size than we could adequately operate with in the years ahead. The current building has many safety hazards, not only to officers, but to detainees when they are brought to the station. And when we get into more detail, I think the chief can give you more insight into those elements. The building fails to meet regulatory and code requirements. One thing we have with our old buildings in town is poor compliance with ADA requirements. And as we build new facilities, that's a very essential part of the work we're doing. The library is a great example of that, and one of the more important items on why we needed to build a new library. The accessibility to that building, the prior one, was very inadequate. Well, we have same issues with the police station, and that was identified as a key item to address. We now have men and women, great, working on the police force. When the building was built over 50 years ago, it was an all-male force. The role of policing, the holding of evidence, the requirements on that has also evolved over time. And what needs to be retained and the duration of how long it needs to be retained have all evolved and required more storage space. And with that also comes maintaining records that are kept confidentially, and where we keep detainees when they are in the police station, the facility just is totally inadequate. Another item that is important to the police department is having locker rooms with adequate locker space. Again, an issue with now a gender diverse workforce. And we have locker rooms that don't have running water or bathrooms. And the last item that we've listed here, and again, these are probably, I guess, the top 7 items. We do not have an emergency operations center. And those kinds of facilities are very important when we have issues of significant storms, whether it be winter storms or hurricane season. The public safety representatives come together and have to make determinations on how to proceed and handle significant events. And we need an appropriate emergency operations center. Right now it's done in the basement of the police station in a rather tight quarters. And again, I'll let the chief speak to how that impacts our ability to do the job effectively. This is a slide just to provide you with some pictures of the current space. And what I would encourage anybody who's interested to either go see the space, or you can go online, and we'll have information at the end of the presentation to show you a walkthrough that the chief provides of the space. So we actually have a video clip that you can look at to see firsthand the current conditions. So this is a site plan of the where the new station, which is the blue figure on this diagram. To the left, to your left, would be High Street. The upper part of the gray box would be Westwood Glen. The orange footprint is Town Hall today. And this represents the site plan after the Deerfield Avenue extension is completed. For anybody who was at town meeting last fall, you would have seen the current conditions and then this diagram, and it shows that we will create a clear roadway from Westwood Glen to Deerfield Avenue. Presently, people use the cut through of the parking lot, behind Town Hall, behind the police station, past the American Legion, to connect to Deerfield Avenue. None of that is a proper roadway. None of it's safe. So what we had approval for in the fall was to create a clear road extension with sidewalks, appropriate lighting, etc. And it required the acquisition of, the primary acquisition of the Scout House property to do that. And these are new parking lots that will be constructed as part of the work with the enabling project. Actually, Mike, correct me, is that one getting constructed first or that comes later? That comes later. And this is creating a clear parking lot for the American Legion, which today, as anybody who's driven through there, you're often driving over parking spaces if nobody's parked there. And the blue footprint again is the image of the newly designed police headquarters. Now, I'm not going to try to walk you through this whole slide. There are a few things I'd like to highlight. This actually is coded to show by color what the nature is of the areas of the new station. Up in this upper corner, this is the Emergency Operations Center. It is also doubling as public space. What we are doing as a town in building new buildings is making sure we have good meeting space. And in the library, there's a large meeting room and a somewhat smaller one at the front of the library on the first floor. Those are in high demand, those spaces, and they're very beneficial to the community. We have many town-related meetings, we have many organizations in town who need places to meet, and they need adequate size to do it. We know this is in high demand, and when we designed this building, we did it with an eye towards how to get multiple uses out of space. And so the pink area, it doesn't show up here as pink, but this on your handout, you'll see it. This will be the entrance to the building, and there'll be access to come over to this meeting space, which is will be a great addition. The other area I want to highlight is this part. I'll call it the lower part of the L. The way the building is designed, this is the one-story wing of the building. It is being designed to allow for an addition on the second floor years down the road, should the town ever need to do so. We wanted to be sure that once we build this building, it meets the needs of the community for decades to come. On the upper floor, this is all the administration, the chief's office, the lieutenants. The red space is the locker room space. This would be for women on the force. This is for the men, and this is a small workout area. And this is another meeting room which also doubles as public space. So when we looked at all this, and the programming was done, and the pieces were put together in the most efficient way possible, we went through an exercise of reconciling the size of this building that we've designed, which is about 20,000 square feet, with the size of the current building, which, as I said earlier, is only 6,000 square feet. And we put it into categories. So the first line, obviously, the doubling of the size of the police department. I just realized what I did. I didn't play the video. So we'll do it in a moment. We have a little video clip. I was going to reference what one of our past chiefs said. I think it was about 15 people on the force back when it was built, and today, Chief, we have 31. So we have a substantial growth in the number of officers we have in the police department. The intake of people who have been arrested, the booking, the detention area is another large contributor, and that would be in that lower part of the L that I mentioned earlier, that space there where we have what's called sally ports, where the officers can drive their cars into bays and safely transfer people they've arrested into a booking area. We need to meet code standards, the corridor spaces. So much about building design and building codes has evolved since the 60s. We need more room for evidence and retention of the evidence, as I mentioned earlier. The Emergency Operations Center is contributing to the size, and the dedicated space for weapons, patrol storage, etc. So we've been able to analyze it and justify and explain the incremental amount of space in the building. The other thing we did to analyze why the building is as large as it is, but making sure we're building a suitable building, we looked at our peer groups. We looked at other communities that have built police headquarters or combined police fire stations over the past 10 years and came up with an array of communities. We looked at it based on population, the number of full-time employees on the force, the size of the buildings that were built, and then determined what the square foot per staff is as a measurement tool. And then we also looked at the year, so we could provide you the information of when each of these facilities was built. So to the far left, you can see where the existing Westwood Police Headquarters ranks. Very small for the size of the overall size of the department, and on a square foot per staff, only 146 square feet. The new building now puts it a little bit to the right, on par with Weston, Harwich, Situate, who are all in the low 500 square feet per staff. And then you can see it extends to the right. And we did do some interpretation of the communities that had both police and fire combined together, so that we could see, we could estimate what the size of the police facility would be if it was a standalone building. And we determined that indeed we are designing a building appropriate for this time, for the size of the force, and allowing for future growth in the force as well. I'm going to take a step back now. Does this seem like a good place where we could run the video? We went to the effort of compiling some commentary on the station, so we'll play that now.
Police station pretty much understaffed, very much lacking in what they need for the basic resources for their department to do its job.
We know we need a police headquarters replacement. We've had a building in place that was built in the 60s that is not only old, but extremely small. Cramped quarters was built in a different era of policemen.
They are simply bursting at the seams, and there are safety-related issues as well. When we were designing the communication center in there, which is really the nerve center, the 911 center, one of the things that we looked at are the national standards around that, and we clearly did not meet those standards.
The building was built in the 1960s, and again, the department was about half the size it was. So it was built, it was sized for the number of officers we had at that time, 15. So imagine just doubling that capacity now. Not having enough locker space, again, not having adequate space for female officers, which in this day and age is definitely not enough. We really need to make sure we treat all the people equally and equitably. And I think the way the station was constructed, we weren't doing that. It wasn't fair to the department.
It fails at a regulatory level. It's not handicap compliant. It's not ADA accessible. It doesn't address any of the needs of a society that wasn't even envisioned in the 1960s when this was built. I see the looks on people's faces when I go around to community talks and I say, you realize last year we answered quite a few calls for service. Anybody have any idea? And the hands go up and they say 200, 300, 500. So no, 17,000. They say 17,000. Absolutely. So those are police-only calls. I'm not talking about the calls that come into the police station, because our dispatchers here at the police station dispatch all the 911 calls from cell phones in town, all the police calls, all the fire calls, all the ambulance calls. But those are police calls only. And they're shocked. And I said, it's pretty busy, isn't it? I said, it sure is. I said, I agree. But I said, this year in 2015, we answered 28,000 calls for service. And they almost fall out of the chair. And they said, I never knew that. And I told them we made 600 arrests. They said, you never hear about that. And I said, well, why would you?
It became clearer and clearer that the University Station was going to get redeveloped, and we were going to see some change in new growth revenue.
We've designed a very attractive building that will be located right next to Town Hall, so we wanted it to complement the beauty of Town Hall, and we wanted to have a building that's highly functional.
It's exciting to see this project finally coming to fruition. I think it's been something that's been talked about for a long time, and I think it's long overdue.
I have a high regard for Westwood. It was a great town, it was a great community, I enjoyed working there, and seeing that, it goes back to this whole notion about investments, and finally seeing the town willing to make that investment in its police department speaks volumes to me. Because I know they have high regard for it, but this is actually now not just their words, but it's their actions.
If the only tool you have is a hammer, you have to approach every problem like it's a nail. Famous quote. This is a very old hammer in a broken down toolbox, and we're trying to respond to a myriad of modern day problems. We want to provide the absolute best service we can. We want to provide the most professional service we can, and we want to do it, and our residents in a way that they deserve, in a way that matches the level of service that we have community-wide. And this building just isn't capable of doing it. We're talking about your own police department. This isn't my police department. Someday I'm going to die. This is not the police department of the officers that work here. Certainly we're providing service while we're here. Now, this is your police department. You live in this town for a reason. You have police and public safety officials for a reason. And we want to do the best job we can do for you.
We were very fortunate to have Chief Chase and Chief Haas contribute to this. They take us back to, I don't know, what year did Haas join us? 90, so 25 years of chiefs up there. So we really appreciate them doing that. So as you can see this picture closer up, this is somewhat of a high street view, kind of at an angle looking at the design of the new station. And the L part of the wing of the building comes back over here. And as I had said in the video footage, we wanted to have a building that complemented Town Hall. We didn't want a huge contrast. And in working with the architects, this evolved through a few iterations until we landed on this design. And this is the design, by the way, that's currently out to bid. And we expect to hear on the bids next week. So when we go back to the Finance Commission at the end of this month, we will have final bids on the project to take to town meeting. And this is an image that I started with at the beginning of the presentation of Town Hall next to the newly designed station. So we've been estimating the cost of this project to be somewhere between $14 million and $16 million. We have rather large contingencies in this budget, and we did so based on what we learned last year. When we came into the bidding season last year for the fire station, the construction industry in this part of the world, and I think all of us can remember last year's winter storm, there was a combination of a lot of construction activity coming out of the recession and then a barrage of small projects coming out of a terrible winter that really absorbed the trades. So bids escalated quite significantly in a short period of time. So we went to town meeting with our final bid on the fire station, which exceeded what we thought the estimates would be. When we did this round, we actually had low and high with a rather large additional contingency built into this budget. Indications are, as we are waiting to receive the bids but get sub-bids, that we are in the right ballpark with this low and high. And we will know, as I said, later next week, where the final bids come in, and as a public entity, we will be compelled by the low bidding process. So we're very hopeful and optimistic that our numbers are good here, and we'll be able to proceed with a final proposal for town meeting. One thing we've done, and Pam will take over in just a couple of moments, we looked at how to fund this building. When we did the fire station last year, we were able to do so within 2.5. And that's great for the community to be able to invest in infrastructure and not need to go for a capital override. We did our analysis with the new revenue coming in from University Station, looked at allocating that revenue across many things, and Pam will give you greater detail on that. And we concluded that it was also important with this new revenue to put some aside for investing in capital projects for debt service. And it's typical that we borrow money for our capital projects, and in this case, we believe we'll proceed with a 30-year bond on it, and based on a range of the low cost of $14 million and an estimated interest rate of 3.5%, it would be about $720,000 annually. And at the high end, closer to $16 million at the same rate, 30-year term, it would be in the low $800,000 range. And we believe we have the sufficient resources to do that. So our plan is to proceed with this within 2.5. Now, I know you have this in front of you. I'm not going to go through all the detail in this, but I want to give you some general impressions from this information on our historic capital projects. This slide is a history of projects going back to the early 90s that were done outside of 2.5. an override was involved. The upper portion is school projects with an aggregate amount of about $63 million in project costs. The next grouping is municipal projects with about $13.5 million of capital costs. And then the lower one are the sewer projects, which are actually done independently. They're done with sewer revenue. Then we have projects that are done within 2.5. Similar history, this time going back to 2000. School projects, about $7 million, and we see an increase in municipal projects up to about $23 million. But there are a lot of smaller projects, and typically smaller projects are done within 2.5. So it's been an exception to have the fire station be able to be financed within 2.5, and an additional very good thing that we are able to do and propose to the police headquarters also within 2.5. One thing we do in town and have for a very long time is we look at our long-range planning, both from a capital standpoint and from an operating budget standpoint. So we know long-term what our needs are, what we're planning towards, and how to make sure we're best positioned to handle those. This is a quick snapshot of what we have on the horizon with the headquarters for the police station in 2016. And then looking ahead, we know that over the next several years, the schools have some very important projects that they'll be bringing forward. They haven't specifically identified what they're going to do yet with the elementary schools, but that is a discussion that's ongoing for the school department. As part of our public safety task force, we also have identified needs to complete renovations at the main fire station, and that has yet to be factored into a future year specifically, but we know once we are successfully completed with getting approved for the police headquarters, that will be the next item that the public safety task force will undertake. Our town hall is over 100 years old. It's a dear building, but it is a tired building inside, and that has long been on our list that needs renovation. And then we have other projects that are future projects, but we know are on our radar, and that includes expansion to the senior center, needing new facilities over at Public Works, and lastly, identifying that it would be something we'd like to consider in the future, community and recreation center. With that, I am happy to turn over the presentation to Pam, and she'll talk more about the financing.
Okay, thank you. So now we talk about how we're going to pay for this building, and more importantly, how does paying for this building fit into our overall budget and other things that we need to provide for in our budget process. So starting off with this slide, when we talk about our finances and look at our budget each year, we have to provide for a lot of things. We provide for our operating budget, school and municipal operating budgets each year. That's where we spend most of the money in town. That's our direct service out to the community. But we also have other needs, our capital budgets. We need to make sure that our buildings are well maintained, our school and municipal buildings. We need to make sure that school and municipal equipment is up to date and efficient, so that our police department has good vehicles, our fire department has proper equipment, the DPW department has proper equipment to go out and do the job they need to do. We need to make sure we have money in our reserve accounts. Just like any homeowner, there are certain guidelines for how much money the town should have in the bank to protect us from emergencies or sudden disruptions to our finances, say a sudden disruption in state aid or an economy job. So we need to make sure we have money in the bank. We also need to take care of some long-term liabilities, things like pension and our post-employment health care obligations. We need to make sure we're addressing those. And then we have to keep all that in mind with what the impact is on the tax bill. Like other suburban communities, we are funded 80% by our tax revenue. So everything we do factors back to that tax bill. So it's a constant balance for us to make sure that we're addressing all of these needs in our budget each year and handling our finances with this whole picture in mind. It's a very difficult balance. The selectmen have worked really hard to make sure that we're working at getting a proper balance. If we're out of balance, we really can fail the community. So if we work to have, the perfect level of reserves and try to put a lot of money away in the bank, we would hurt our operating budget and not have enough for our direct services for school and municipal. If we put too much money into the operating budgets and really build those to a high degree, we'll fail with our capital budget and have poor equipment that, the public safety won't be able to get out and do the job they need to do. If we ignore our long-term liabilities, well, then we're really just pushing that problem down the road to our children to have them deal with that. And then again, most importantly, we need to make sure what are we doing? What is the tax bill impact? Because we could do a lot of great things if we didn't have to be concerned with what the tax bill might be. So we're really always working to balance this each year, taking a look at this. The selectmen are helped in this process every year by a committee in place, the Long Range Financial Planning Committee. It's a committee that's been in place since 2003. You can see listed on the document who represented on this committee, but it's really a very broad selection from different people in town. The Board of Selectmen are represented, the school committee, 3 members of the Finance and Warrant Commission on the committee, Planning Board, the Board of Assessors, our tax collector, our town treasurer, our town administrator, our school superintendent, and 2 community at-large representatives. This committee meets every month, if not more, during the heavy period of the budget season, and is working on all kinds of issues. We've listed some at the bottom, but all of them to keep that balance in mind, to keep making sure we're addressing everything in town. So they'll look at our financial policies, make sure we have enough reserves, they'll look at our debt levels, see where we're at, they'll make sure we're addressing our capital needs. So a lot of focus by that group in helping us stay in balance. To talk next about University Station revenue, certainly something very different for a community. We live under Proposition 2.5. Our resources are limited by those laws. And then you have something like University Station Health, and it can give us some additional revenue. A lot of people worked very hard for a long, long time to bring that project to the community, and we're now seeing the benefit from that. The Long Range Financial Planning Committee was also working, though, before the money came, before the project really got developed, to say how will we allocate that money when it comes. And that committee made sure we laid out that we will use that money to address all areas, things I showed you on the first chart. So starting on the left, direct service costs. There are some costs, additional costs to service the University Station project, and they were outlined when the community was considering that project. Those primarily are increased needs for public safety, and any impact on the school system from children that might come from the residential component of that development. So we need to make sure that we use the money to handle any of those costs so we don't take away from other services being given to the town. The other item we looked at was the operating budgets, the school and municipal budgets. Under Prop 2.5, those are usually limited to about a 2.5% increase each year, which is usually not sufficient to keep up our level of service. So some of the money could be allocated to increase above that 2.5. A portion of the money was identified for debt service and capital. As Nancy mentioned, we want to make sure we're continuing to reinvest in the community, reinvest in our buildings, maintain our capital. And then a portion is identified for tax relief. We want some of this new money to go directly to our residents in assisting with their tax bill and the impact of our choices on their tax bill. So we had this framework in place before the money came. Now the money has been coming, what are we doing with it? So this slide is showing you money to date from University Station. The first year we had new tax revenue was FY15, when the project was just beginning. We got in $565,000 in new tax revenue. And that year, that money all went to direct service costs. We needed to add that year the public safety staffing to service the new project. So the $565,000 in FY15 did go to the police and fire departments, and we were able to add some staffing in both of those departments. FY16, the current year we're in, our final amount we had finalized just late last fall was $3.2 million. So certainly a significant increase in revenue coming in as that project now came up online. Of that, we used $925,000 at fall town meeting and put it into a capital stabilization fund. We put it in a savings account purely for capital. That lets us save money in that account, use it for future needs. You will see at the upcoming May town meeting that we will use now some of that money in there to replace the turf field at the high school. That is now 10 years old, a facility used by everyone in town 24/7. It's time to replace that, and we'll be able to use this money to do so. The other thing we did in FY16 was apply some of that money to the operating budgets. We took $1.5 million and applied it to the school and municipal operating budgets to let them increase above that 2.5%. The budgets actually went up 5.2% in FY16, and you can see the chart on the right. The school department budget got just over $1 million from the University Station revenue, municipal budget $461,000. So that's what we've done to date with the money, and now we're looking at FY17. So what is planned for FY17? We're continuing that same process of making sure we're balancing out how we use the money and trying to address all of our areas. In FY17, the estimate of new money from the University Station, $2.67 million, is what we'll take in and can plan for and use in the FY17 budget. So currently is the allocation that the Board of Selectmen is proposing is shown here, starting on the left. Debt service. When we mention the debt service or capital, we're currently allocating $800,000 for debt services. As Nancy mentioned, that will allow us to do the police station project within Proposition 2.5. The second item, the operating budgets. We will continue again to increase those budgets above the 2.5%. We currently have allocated $870,000, which will increase those budgets from 2.5% to a 4% increase. The third item, the direct service costs. We're allocating $200,000 for any direct service costs related to servicing the University Station project in FY17. At this point, one of the items that's been identified, the school budget has indicated they need a new bus to service that there are some kids coming into the residential units there, and that would be a cost for them of about $65,000, and it's this category where we would pay that type of cost. We don't want that to impact the rest of the school budget, so we'll pay that out of this allocation. And then finally, on the right, we've allocated $800,000 from this money to tax relief for FY17. And I just want to speak about tax relief for a minute. The selectmen actually have 4 proposals to address tax relief for FY17. And just to walk through those, the bar graphs here, the bar on the left is your actual bill in the current year. The average home in town is about $568,000 in value, and their bill is just over $8,600 a year. The bar in the blue bar is what would be your tax bill if the selectmen did not propose any tax relief. That bill would climb about 3% to just over $8,800. So the blue chart, the blue bar is what would be your bill for FY17. The selectmen are taking a couple of items of action, and they're listed at the bottom. First, to keep the debt for the police project within Proposition 2.5. If we were not able to allocate some of the new revenue to this project and went out for a debt exemption, it would add an annual additional $104 to the tax bill. So that blue bar in the middle would actually grow to over $8,900. Second, maintaining a commercial residential tax split. We currently have 2 tax rates in town, one for residential and one a much higher rate for commercial. That provides that average home here with a benefit of $1,100 a year. I'm not sure how many of our residents realize how important that commercial rate is in keeping down the residential bill. But the selectmen, working with the Board of Assessors, will look to maintain that similar amount. The selectmen also have an article on the warrant for town meeting to allocate $500,000 of free cash directly to tax relief. So it's a separate article on the town meeting warrant that people can vote for. That allocation provides $65 in relief to this bill. And finally, as I mentioned, allocating $800,000 of the University Station revenue to this bill provides another $104 in tax relief. So we're going from the bar in the middle, the blue bar, 8,800, would have been higher if we had to do the police station outside, would be about 8,900. And what's being proposed now is the bar on the right. $8,690, a 1% increase over the previous year, or $89 increase. So altogether, $273 in tax relief for the average home. So a number of different ways we're trying to address that. The selectmen are very mindful of the impact on our residents with the taxes, and this is a way that they're looking to start and address this and to continue this. We will continue this similar type of allocation each year going forward. And finally, just to talk about debt, as Nancy mentioned, we would be paying for the police station through a 30-year long-term bond. And $15 million may sound like a significant amount for a bond, but actually Westwood really is carrying a relatively low debt level. We have annual guidelines on how much of our money should be spent on debt, just like a homeowner, and they'll tell you how much of your income you should be putting towards debt or putting towards your mortgage. A town has the same type of guidelines. What this chart shows you on the left is our guidelines by industry standard and how we would be judged by rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's. We should not exceed about 8% of our revenue on debt service each year. So for us, in this year, that would be about $5.7 million. That we should not spend more than that on an annual basis on debt within Proposition 2.5. The bar on the right shows you what we're actually spending. We're spending $2.3 million, or about 3%. So we have room to increase our debt and reinvest in the community, and bringing the police station online here would still be well within our guidelines for what we should be carrying for debt. And just finalizing with the chart that Nancy already showed you, at a 30-year bond, the debt would be about $700,000 to $800,000, depending on the final cost of the project, and that amount fits well within that debt guidelines, fit well within what the selectmen have allocated from the University Station project to pay for debt, and still allows us to have significant funding to address those other areas of the budget, the operating budget, the capital needs, and the tax relief. I think that's it.
So, let me wrap up with some final statements, summary statements about what you heard tonight. Why now? Why do we need a police station now? First, the current station that we're operating under or out of is 1/3 the size of anything that's been built in neighborhood communities in the last 15 years. It is absolutely too small for the service we're trying to provide. The 3 chiefs that have come to Westwood during my tenure all said they needed a new station, and as that 25 years has progressed, the staff has only increased in the department and University Station, sort of the camel that broke the camel's back. We need to provide new services in that area. We have additional staff again, and this building is inadequate. Second, we can afford to do it now, and we can afford to do it now without impacting services. We have not been able to afford to do it before without cutting on the level of service to the community, meaning we would have had to make cuts in the operating budget or going out for an override to fund it. We can do it now because of the additional revenue that we've received without cutting services that we currently have and without having to go and obtain an override or get permission for an override to fund the debt service. Simply fund it over 30 years within the budget that we have. And the second one is that we had a station that we've used for 50 years. We've now designed the station which will be there for another 50 years, if not more. This station is thinking ahead a little bit. We don't want to be in a position we were in the last 25 years of having an undersized station that we can't add on to, that we only can replace. We've actually designed features into this station, a second floor over the detention area, for instance, to expand the square feet. And internally, there are other features that we made provision for, such as adding lockers and things like that, that can be added as we need to add new staff to the department. So we really feel that this station, unlike the last station, will service us well for the next 50 years and possibly beyond. So with those summary comments. What I'd like to do now is open it up to questions. Again, I'll just repeat, ask the question to me, and then I'll see if I can direct it to the appropriate party to give you an answer. We do ask that you give us your name and address just for the record. I'll remind you also this is being taped, so it can be played on the local television. Any questions? We weren't that good.
Paul Terry at 82 Bishop Street in Westwood.
We're trying to get it.
Paul Terry, 82 Bishop Street in Westwood. My question is, with the Deerfield extension and the date and all that stuff we have been doing, is there any plans, not looking at construction plans, only pipes and pathways for alternate telecommunications and power running down there and have that? So if we have to make any changes in the future, we have that in place.
Don, can you answer that?
We're talking with the gas company about creating some redundancy coming from Gay Street over to Westwood Glen. That's the only real kind of utility infrastructure improvement that might be discussed, and that may not happen. I mean, it depends on whether they're willing to pay for one thing. But the rest of it is all pretty much geared to basically replace what's already there.
It just seems to be a shame that, if you're digging up the street and doing all that work there, that you have the ability to fill in those extra pipes at a minimal cost now, as opposed to having those people away and just do need that. It's something to think about.
Yeah, it's something we can talk to the engineers about, and we could still do it. The issue that a lot of times when you try to design things that you don't really know what you're designing for, is they end up getting unused, because when you finally decide what you really need for, it's different than what you thought when you were kind of designing it. But that is something you could talk to them about.
Anybody else?
Steve Rafsky, Campbell Street. I just wanted to make a comment, really not a question, and that is, as someone who saw this in the early stages, I think the task force ought to be complimented. There are so many changes that make it fit in to that location, not overpower the town hall. Early on, there was fencing that some of us thought was not appropriate. I think it's a great example of the task force, the consultants and all those involved, and I'm not one of them, who really listened to public comment. I think this is a home run. I think it's really needed. But as someone who's sitting as a resident, I just think it's very impressive how many of the comments were listened to. So I just wanted to make that comment as seeing a very early version of seeing it now.
Bill Pruitt, Chair 16 Dean Street. I just want to make a couple of statements, Mike. First off, I'm 100% behind this project. I agree with Steve. And one of the reasons I agree so easily is because not far from here is the Hamlin School. And Paul Hamlin was a selectman. I got to work with him. Pretty nice guy. I can remember one time before Paul was a selectman, it was this school was coming up for discussion at our annual town meeting. And Paul made a very, very succinct statement. He said, if Westwood is consistent, it's consistent for building it too late and building it too small. So kudos to the task force, kudos to you, Chief, and to the folks who worked on this, because I think you put together a pretty good project. I don't have any problems with this. I don't have any problems with the fire station project. My concern, and I'm glad the selectmen are here, my concern is this, is my wife and I, Chris and I, every 5 years, we set up our budgets, go on a trip someplace exotic, like Italy or Ireland or Hawaii or something like that. So what concerns me is, I'm taking a look at some of our capital projects, and Pam, did you put that slide, that's a great slide you put together. But I'm looking at Carvey Street, still on the books, the library is on the books, the Islington Fire Station is on the books. Police station absolutely positively has to be done. And I suspect the High Street Fire Station might be done as well. And then I'm hearing about plans within the town to build a mega grammar school. And I have to tell you, I have to step back and say, how many capital projects can we put on the books? I know the schools have nothing to do with this, but you have to look at the whole overall picture. And I can tell you, I'm very, very concerned, because we also have the Islington Community Center, which will be coming up down the road as well. And I can't help but think of Selectman Ahern's very subtle comments that I paid close attention to at his Selectmen's meetings. And he made a comment in regards to the revenue coming out of University Ave in a certain time frame. And I just hope, I hope our selectmen and the other leaders within the town think about all of the capital projects. I think this is needed. I can go to town meeting and vote for this, but I'm very, very concerned what's going to come after this. That's my concern.
Joe Genta, Fox Hill Street. I guess this is for the selectmen. To follow up on that last question, do you have any rough numbers that you can provide us for future projects from 17 through 2023? What they might be looking at? And then if you could provide some, maybe at the next meeting, some schedules of our debt schedules, what's in place today, what it's going to look like next year and going forward.
We most certainly can do that. Pam has all the debt schedules. In terms of numbers to those projects, on the municipal side, we have a schedule of some of the rough estimates. On the school side, we do not. And as much, Joe, you referred to a large grammar school, it's not clear that that will be what goes forward. That's really up to the schools to bring forward, and right now they're assessing still, so they haven't indicated whether they're going to do renovations or new build or a combination. And that, when you look at five elementary schools, but they were talking about 3 of them that haven't been addressed. This school had been added onto and renovated. Martha Jones had been added onto and renovated, so it leaves the other 3. They haven't told us what amount to plan for.
Based on past history, can you just guesstimate what those might look like? And what about the municipal projects we're talking about? Do they have ideas in their head?
Yeah, Pam, do you have any numbers on the municipal? I cannot on the schools. I can't speak for them, and I would be not in an appropriate position to say something on their behalf.
Is it fair to say we're looking at something they're all done in the neighborhood of $25 to $50 million?
I don't know.
If I could just add, lots of times people ask about the capital. I think that list is there to give you a flavor that there are other projects, and we know that and want to accommodate that. But it's a continual process. We don't have like a finite list. We will be investing in capital over and over and over. The town will, as long as the town's in place. So when we get through that list, we'll be back at buildings we did before. Just like a homeowner, it's not a finite process. You repair something in your house and you're done. It's an ongoing process. So we're trying to lay out our finances and our debt schedules so that as we bring things on, other debt is rolling off. When we went through and showed you the allocation of the University Station revenue, that's going to continue each year. We're not done with the new revenue coming in from that project. We're not done by any means. So that just shows you this year. But our debt schedules are online. We have a budget summary book online, but we can put them into a future presentation that gives you a feel. But we very much try to structure our debt so that debt drops off while new projects comes on. That's how we were able to bring the fire station within 2.5, because the debt for the Carvey Street facility ended. So we're constantly looking at that as part of the process that the town treasurer does and the long range financial planning committee does. So we will have, that list kind of lays out what's on the horizon. We have a 5-year capital plan, what people have put. Doesn't mean it's going to happen in that time frame. It's just to give you a feel of the next series of buildings. But there'll be more, beyond that as we kind of continue on as an entity.
Anyone else? What's that?
Dad's listening to the song.
Yeah.
I heard him say, don't do it.
Don't do it. I agree with Pat on that one.
You let him off too easy, Pat.
What's that? Okay, so we had this last slide to indicate to people that there are resources. We've had resources available on this project right along. You can go to the town's webpage for various presentations and information on this. The Public Safety Task Force site is also available, and we are present on Facebook and disseminating information in that way. And the town website, it's the low, if you go to the homepage, it's the lower right-hand corner, Public Safety, and now bring you into all the information that we have on our public safety buildings, both police and fire, actually.
Just on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I want to thank everybody again for coming out tonight, for everybody who worked on the task force. We'll be holding another one of these informational sessions in 2 weeks. I'm not saying for those of you who came out tonight, you want to come back and hear the same thing. But if you're talking about it with people, please let them know that there'll be that meeting on the 24th. We'll also be before Finance Commission on the 28th. And I want to remind you that Maytown meeting is May 2nd. And it would be great to have you, your neighbors and friends come out to town meeting. We can't do the work we need to do without the support of people in the community. And you get to express that support, or at least vote your opinion at town meeting. That's the ultimate meeting for us and what we do our work based on. So I really urge everybody who can come to that to do so. And again, we'll stay around for a while. We have great representation from our police department here. Take the time to meet them, and also from our fire department. And anything we can do to share more information with you, we'd like to do so. We have a sign-up sheet. If you want follow-up information, we'll take your emails. So thank you again, and we appreciate you coming out.
And if you found this tonight informative, please tell your friends and other acquaintances, other residents of the community, that this is going to be run on Westcat from time to time. It's also available streaming on Westcat to go and look at it and form their own opinion. Thank you very much for coming.